So I want to talk about what Gavin Newsom and members of the legislature in California did to push back against this authoritarianism coming from Trump's federal government. And I've been telling you for a long time that the way to push back, the only real way we have at our disposal to push back against this stuff is through the states, because Democrats have zero power in Congress. There's really nothing they can do. Now, they could be putting up a better fight politically, that's for damn sure. And there are things they can do. Obviously, they need 60 votes in the Senate, the Republicans do, to pass anything. There are things they can do. They're not completely without power, but they're mostly without power. And the leadership in the Senate, and really in the House too, but God, especially in the Senate, Chuck Schumer. I saw this guy. You know, we're approaching a deadline for this budget. Well, we're going to go into shutdown if they don't pass a new budget bill. And Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, was on the Sunday shows today. I saw a clip of him. Oh my God, this guy is beyond pathetic, beyond weak. Talking about how, oh, we're really hoping the president talks to us so we can reach a deal. And then he was asked, well, what if he doesn't? Are you going to go along and rubber stamp whatever Republicans do to keep the government open? You know, go along with it, whatever they want in this budget bill to keep the government open. And of course, he just wimps right out of that. And he just goes back to repeating, well, we hope that doesn't happen. We're really hoping that President Trump will come and talk to us. It's just so friggin' pathetic. Anyway, my point has been all along, the most effective way to push back on all of this is through the states. I've been saying it since before Trump even took office. And so I'm really happy when I see things like this. And they passed a law in California which would make it illegal for law enforcement, including federal law enforcement officers, to wear masks. Because we've seen that. We've seen Trump's thugs wearing masks, refusing to show their faces, refusing to identify themselves. This bill also requires that there be visible identification on these people at all times, in the, you know, except with some certain specified exceptions, but they have to be identified on their uniform. No more plain clothed thugs in masks kidnapping people off the streets. So that was great to see Gavin Newsom and the legislature do this. However, my guess is that will never take effect. It doesn't take effect until January, anticipating that there will be lawsuits. And I'm sure the federal government will file a lawsuit. And I'm sure that they will claim that they are exempt from that law because of the supremacy clause. Now, the supremacy clause, and I think the Supreme Court will probably side with Trump because they side with him on everything. On top of the fact that the Supreme Court has made over the decades an absolute mess, in my legal opinion, of the supremacy clause in their jurisprudence on this issue. It's been absolutely horrendous. The supremacy clause simply says that the Constitution and laws of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And what that means is that if there is a state law that conflicts with the Constitution or federal law, then the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution and federal law take precedent, trump, if you will, the state law. That's what it means. But the Supreme Court has held time and again that things that aren't even laws outweigh state law. And that should not be the case. So, for example, in this situation, there is no law, there is no federal law, and certainly nothing in the Constitution that says federal law enforcement is allowed to wear masks and not be identifiable in their uniform in conducting their duties. There's no federal law on this point. It's all just policy, of the administration allowing them to do that, right? That's not a law. Policy, federal government, executive branch policy is not law. So there is no federal law. But now we have a state law saying federal law enforcement cannot wear masks and be unidentifiable. So we have a state law and then just government policy or allowing this to be the case. So it should be a no-brainer at the Supreme Court. The Supremacy Clause isn't even implicated. You have a state law and then no law at all. So there's no conflict. There's no conflict of laws there. However, as I said, the Supreme Court, number one, pretty much rules with Trump no matter what. And also they've made a fucking mess of Supremacy Clause jurisprudence, and they have ruled all kinds of different things that the executive has done that aren't actually laws, take supremacy over state laws. So I fully expect that this law will never actually go into effect. But we'll see. Fingers crossed. I expect the worst out of the Supreme Court, but hoping to be pleasantly surprised. I don't expect to be surprised here, but we'll see. But regardless, I'm very happy to see California take this step, because what we're and even if they're not successful in this effort to unmask them. By the way, this is something that needs to be done if Democrats take back control of Congress next year. These are the kinds of laws that they should pass, and they should pass them as standalone bills, right? Pass a law saying that we are not going to have unidentified, plain-clothed, masked thugs kidnapping people off the streets of America. Pass that bill, send it to the president, and then let him veto it. That's what needs to be done. And lots of things like that can be done and should be done if Democrats take back control. But regardless, going back to the California law, even if it never takes effect, there's other things that they can be doing. And I've talked about this many times. I just saw another video yesterday of some protesters outside an ICE facility. And some of these thugs came out and just grabbed a woman and just shook her and drug her and then threw her down on the ground. And then she got back up and they put her in a chokehold. This woman didn't assault police officers. This woman didn't do anything except stand in front of a police vehicle and with the other protesters. They came out and they assaulted her. These masked thugs, these big men, these pussies hiding behind their masks, taking a woman, an unarmed woman who didn't lay a finger on them, and threw her to the ground and put her in a chokehold. That is assault. The force they used against this woman was not justified in that situation. And therefore it's assault. It was not legally justified. And force, even being used by law enforcement against civilians, that is not legally justified, and they're only allowed to use such force as is necessary for the purposes of doing their job, to effectuate an arrest or in some other facet of their job. It has to be legally justifiable. This was not. And I see this kind of stuff all the time. These are crimes being committed by these masked thugs. And state officials should be arresting and prosecuting these people. Anyway, more about that later, but I just wanted to bring your attention to bring this California law to your attention if you weren't aware of it already, and to, congratulate Governor Newsom and the legislature for doing this. Anyways, thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon.